Little one, but it's the first.
Yeah.
Oh, he's cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
On the crankbait.
Springtime bass fishing on Carnegie Lake. Stay tuned. It's going to be a good one.
Right off of that piece of wood. I think we're just going to do the boat flip with him here.
Help yourself. Get it in. There
we go.
Oh, you grab it, Stevie.
There you go.
All right. Carnegie Lake. Steve Horvath catching some springtime bass. So what do we got here, Steve?
Well, we had an isolated piece of wood, looked like almost like a little piece of telephone pole, and the fish was right on it. The crankbait bounced off of it. You could veer off, and then it just stopped. And I think that's going to be the pattern today. I think we're going to catch them off with some isolated wood.
Mm-hmm. And again, the crankbait probably because of the water depth, they're not going to be up in the bank.
Right. The fish haven't moved all the way up to the bank yet to spawn. They're kind of staging. You know, water temperatures in that 56 to 58 degree range, and the fish are getting ready. They want to move to the bank. It's just not warm enough yet.
We got a beautiful day out here, so maybe that water temperature come up and just get them to come up a little bit closer.
Yeah, we may get a few, 2-3 degrees as the day goes on, and I think fishing will get better.
All right, let's go. Let's get
let's
another
put this guy back.
Yeah. There you go. All right, I got him. A little one. A little tap. I knew I was going to get one out of there.
It was funny because I was watching your line when it hit the water.
Clink, clink. Oh, man. This is a little bass here. And basically call them bank runners, I guess. And what we're just trying to do right now, again, the water temperature is still in the low 50s, mid 50s, I guess. And we're just trying to find out where the fish are. Are they up on the bank or are they out farther? So I'm just throwing a little stick bait here, this little plastic bait, and finally got one off of that bank. So maybe we'll catch some other ones off of that as they come out.
Right, and something important for the viewers that are watching the show is we're fishing a lake that we don't fish a lot. We don't know a ton about this lake.
Right.
And instead of us taking our 2 favorite crankbaits and going down the bank, we're fishing something different.
Right.
So if they're hitting a crankbait, maybe you'll switch over to a spinnerbait or another crankbait. And if you start catching them more on the Senko, then maybe I have to slow down. Mm-hmm. And that's a good tip for people, not to fish the same thing your buddy's fishing.
Right, and different water and different baits in that water column.
Right, and that's what we're doing. We're covering the whole water column from the surface to the bottom right now. There's one, Bob. Again, on that crankbait, out from the bank a little bit. Not the biggest, but I'll take them right now.
Now what we have here, Steve, we have just these, I guess, emerging lily pads, little pockets of them, and that seems to be where the fish are holding.
Right, we have some emerging pads. And if you notice, the bank itself now is more of a sand than a rock. So it's kind of like a change in the bank that we have. And I think we're going to get a bunch of fish up here. The other thing is, we got a little bit of wind now. Mm-hmm. And the wind breaks up the surface a little bit, makes it a little bit harder for the fish to see your line as you fish. And, we got everything going for us now instead of like a flat, slick day, like everybody's dream fishing day, not a breath of wind.
Right, yeah.
Unfortunately, it's easy to fish, but maybe not easy to catch fish with those conditions.
Yeah, and so these fish, with the surface breaking up, throw my spinnerbait back on here and start throwing that, see what
Yeah,
happens there.
yep, might be a good idea.
And then with the crankbait, it's just, these are pretty aggressive fish, really.
Yeah, they're hitting it hard.
Yeah.
They really are. For as cool as the water is, and it's not even like a real stop and go retriever or anything.
No, you're just moving it.
I'm moving it steady. As I glance off of something, that's when the fish are hitting it. You know, so I think we're on to something.
Steve, we've been fishing banks and stuff like that, and now we came to a lay down or a blow down or something like that. Now you come upon this. How do you fish this now? What are you looking for now, especially this time of year?
A laydown like this has basically 3 key areas. You have the outside, which we're fishing first, because I like to fish the outside of it so that if you do hook a fish out here, you don't spook the rest of the fish on the tree. The next part you would have is more toward the bank, is where the tree would actually fork. And you'll see a Y, and we have that little bit of a Y that comes down. That's another key spot where the tree touches the water. And then the third key spot on the tree is where the tree actually lays down on the water near the bank. And, you know, on a big tree like this, we can make 15, 20 casts to it. You know, if we really think that there's a fish here. Now, this is really the only lay down on this stretch, and we're in about 9 or 10 feet of water, which is the deepest water in the area. And that basically makes it ideal for fish to move up and down with the sunlight. They don't even have to come to the bank. They could just suspend in the upper limbs. You know, so for my dollar, this is a good spot to fish.
And now fishing it with a jig is a plastic worm, what?
Well, when we first came up to it, we tossed the crankbaits around the outside, and now we're picking apart the inside with a jig or a worm. And to me, the most important part about what we're doing is I'm fishing with really heavy line. If we get a fish in here, we have to set the hook, get the fish moving towards us, and get it out immediately. Otherwise, we'll wind up with a doily knit in a tree, and you know, we'll never get the fish out. And I think a lot of people make that mistake. They fish too light a line, or they let the fish swim with the bait a long time. You know, if we get a hit right now, it's going to be an immediate hook set, and the fish is coming toward us. And there's
Right out of the
right out, no doubt about it.
And that's why you have that stick, your flipping stick
Exactly.
there with a big backbone in it.
7.5 foot flipping stick, 25-pound line. And, you know, it's made for this type of situation. You know, and this is more of a pitching presentation than a flipping presentation. If we were to flip, and when I get this cast in, I'll demonstrate a flip. If we were to flip, we would have the line out, say, even with the reel, and we would just take the line out and drop the bait down into the tree. Now you notice I cast over top of a limb. Nobody in their right mind with 8-pound test is going to throw over top of the limb, at least in a tournament. I mean, you can have fun wrestling a fish out on lighter line when you're fun fishing, but if you're money fishing, I really recommend really heavy tackle for this type of stuff.
And one thing is that you really will pick this apart big time, not just 5 casts.
Right, yeah. We've made 10, 12 casts, and I've got one beautiful backlash here, and that does happen. But we're covering every bit of this tree. Really picking it apart, slowly, methodically. Now that doesn't match up with our pattern.
Right.
You know, our pattern is to move, find isolated brush, isolated trees, some kind of isolated cover, and that's where the fish are. But a lot of times you may pick that 1 or 2 bigger fish of the day
Right
off of something like this, and that's why we're taking the time to do it. There's one, Bob. I got him.
Good.
Talk about a surprise.
Yeah.
Another one on the crankbait, way up shallow.
And as a little bit fish are they're just swimming along that bank.
Yep. They're following the bank up, and we're kind of intercepting them. Hopefully we'll luck into a bigger one here pretty soon. But it looks like we've got the pattern on the small ones.
Yeah, and the bank that you said when we pulled into this spot, again, it's more shallower.
Right, this is a different bank. If you notice if you look up in here, the bank is flatter, it's a little swampier looking, and a lot of times these banks have a darker bottom, and the water back here will tend to heat up faster. You know, a lot of times fish will congregate in these areas. Now, when it gets hot in the summer, it's probably one of the first places that they'll move out of. But in the spring, it's a good bet. That is a pretty good isolated piece of wood over here, Bob. There's one, Bob. Got this one on a spinnerbait. There we go.
Yeah, nice one.
Again, isolated wood, another fat one. See, now this is definitely a female. You can see how fat it is.
Oh yeah, you can see it.
Yep.
Peeking out.
Getting ready to spawn.
Yep.
Had both hooks off of isolated wood again, and a trailer hook on the spinnerbait.
That's
Always a trailer hook on the
Always.
spinnerbait. But that's definitely a better fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get another one. There's one, Bob. Back in this dirtier water. Not quite as big as the others, but they'll do.
And again, we're just fishing that flat bank, coming up on it. Look at him.
Yeah, he got it pretty good too. He crushed it.
2 hooks.
2 hooks, and he's got it.
It's a fat little fish too, though.
Yep. Another male moving up. And yeah, we're on this flatter bank. We got a little bit different watercolor here. You know, it's a little dingier here.
Right. Yeah.
And the fish are hitting the spinnerbait. It seems like the deeper water, the fish wanted the crankbait. You know, we actually have 2 patterns going. You know, we have a crankbait pattern going on a little bit steeper bank with isolated wood and pads. And then on the shallower banks, you know, we're catching them on a spinnerbait.
Yeah.
Again, isolated stuff, and they're not everywhere, and we have to work for them.
Yeah, when you come up on a spot, you got to start looking at, picking it apart.
Yeah.
And just,
Yep. You have to look at it and say, okay, there's a little lane between the pads, or there's a clump of pads, or there's a stick in the pads, you know, and that's where the fish are coming from, those type of spots. You know, it's almost getting easier to call.
yeah. Steve, we've come down this bank here with a lot of overhangs and stuff like that. Now I know we're coming up to a piece of structure here that's isolated. Now how are you going to fish that with that crankbait?
Well, I think the most important thing, Bob, is angle. If you were to throw to this log and reel it across the log, you're really fishing at a wrong angle. What you need to do is throw out and reel alongside the log, reel the lure down the log. So I'm going to cast up in there. We want to wind it right down the log. Oh, there's one, Bob. There's a swinger. I think he's got it pretty good.
He's got it pretty good.
There we go.
In the boat.
On the carpet a little bit, but in the boat.
And again, that fish, Steve, right off that piece of...
Right off the end of that log, threw it in there, kind of parallel the log, and it just stopped.
Right, that was really pretty close up, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a little shallower. Well, you know what? It's probably low 70s right now.
Right.
You know, the water's getting a little warmer.
Yep.
Fish are getting a little more amped up. Tell you what, I hooked them pretty good too. It wasn't getting away. It's funny, in tournaments they're always barely hooked. This one's got it with 3 hooks.
Again, he took it right across, almost right across his mouth.
Right across his mouth. I mean, that fish definitely wanted it.
Look how big and fat
Yep.
that is in
Yep, definitely moving up the spawn.
Yep. Yep.
Yep, good fish. Get it right back in the water here. But on the crankbait again.
On that crankbait.
Seems to be the deal.
There you go. All right, look at this, right at the boat. Now that fish followed me out and hit right by the boat.
Yeah,
Oh, nice little chunk.
yeah.
Again,
And-
off those pads.
And on a crankbait.
Yep. On a crankbait.
See what happens when he puts down the Senko, folks? He actually catches something.
I've been trying to avoid this.
Yeah.
All right. It came out right out here and hit the boat.
I think there's another one here. On the spinnerbait. We'll just ski him right in here.
A little buck.
Yep, another little guy. You know what I say, Bob? They all count as one.
That's it.
Get back here. Let's get another one now. Right up there in them pads. There he is, Bob. Got one on the spinnerbait. There we go. On the spinnerbait.
Yep. Yep.
There he is.
Nice one. Nice one.
Yep.
Again, off a piece of,
Piece of wood,
Right.
isolated near some pads on a flat bank. And I mean, it's not a big fish, but it definitely goes along with the pattern of the keeper fish have been on the flatter banks, isolated cover or pads. And that one came on a spinnerbait.
yeah, that's not as fat as some of the other ones we've had.
No. But again, it's a keeper.
Yep.
You know, I was taking it and I was reeling it right through the bush. I had hit the bush, and a lot of times what you want to do is, as it comes through a bush or an obstruction or hits it, you know, some people like to just flutter it or just
Right,
take
yeah.
it. One of the things I like to do is I like to pop it a couple times. You know, you watch the pros and stuff on TV, and they're constantly popping.
Moving that.
You know, they're giving the bait a little motion. You know, you're not just throwing it out and winding it in. I think that's one of the big keys to catching fish on a spinnerbait, especially in open water. You know, if you're not bouncing off of something, you're kind of creating that deflection.
Right, right.
You know, and in this case, you know, it worked well. And that fish had both hooks again.
Yep.
Had the trailer hook and the main hook. So they definitely want it. They're nice and aggressive. But as we get closer to the spawn, I think you're going to find the fish aren't going to be as aggressive. You know, they're thinking more on bedding than eating. And what you wind up with is a lot of short strikers. They come in, they ram it with their nose.
Right, just to get it out of there.
And now for a closer look at today's tackle, Delaware Valley Outdoors presents the Tackle Box. For more information about the tackle used on today's show, go to DelawareValleyOutdoors.com.
Well, Steve, we're over here at Carnegie Lake. Let me tell you, it's a beautiful lake. It's electric only. Matter of fact, look behind us there. We got rowers and stuff like that. This is a great lake right outside of Princeton, and it's just wonderful fishery.
It really is a good lake, Bob. It doesn't get a ton of fishing pressure. It's an electric motor only lake, so you can't crank up your big outboard, but if you have a boat with a bigger outboard like we do, you just can't use it.
All right.
Okay? It's a very long lake. You know, it's several miles long.
Yep.
You could fish a whole day here and really not get bored with where you're at.
No, you could just do the whole lake in one day and just come right back and you'd be finished for the day. And a lot of good structure, blowdowns, pads. You got everything you want.
There's a little bit of everything. You know, there's chunk rock, people that like to flip and pitch. You know, there's lots of laydowns, there's pads, there's open bank. And one of the neat things is, you know, if you don't want to come here bass fishing, there's big carp, catfish,
Perch.
crappies. We caught perch today. So the lake's really got a lot of fish in it.
Well, the baits that we used today, or I should say you caught the fish on today, was this little bait right here. Tell me about this bait, Steve.
Right. It's a little banded crankbait. It's a color similar to like a citrus shad, or I think they might call it citrus. Blue back, chartreuse, white belly. The lake has really good watercolor. And when I say that, we have about foot and a half visibility today.
Yeah.
And when the water's stained enough that we need that kind of, chartreuses and bright colors, just to help the fish kind of cue on it. And, we saw like the little shad and stuff today. They have a blue back, shiny on the sides. So that's a pretty good imitation.
And now you had a real shallow diver here.
Right.
And why is that?
Well, most of the lake, the boat's sitting in 5-6 feet of water, but most of your cast is in 3-4 feet of water. There are lots of laydowns. You want to remember that when you're fishing your crankbait around a lot of wood and stuff, number one, you probably want to go up the heavier line. But number two is don't get excited, don't get in a rush when you're reeling the crankbait through the cover. You have to kind of finesse it through, and you're going to get snagged. We got snagged a couple dozen times today.
But we got him out, yeah.
Yeah, we got most of them out except for the one bait you lost.
I did lose one. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
But, it was my bait,
I know. That's why I'm happy about losing it. But these do go through wood a lot more than you would think.
Yes, yes. And the other thing is sharp hooks.
Sure.
You were really not crushing the fish with the hook set like you would on a plastic worm or a jig where you really have to drive the hook home. The fish comes up, grabs it, turns sideways, and it pretty much hooks itself.
And the other bait that you had today was this spinner bait. Now let's talk a little bit about the blade color and the size and stuff.
Yeah, well, that's a 3/8 ounce spinnerbait. A lot of times in a lake with smaller fish or clear water, you might want to downsize to 1/4 ounce. But this spinnerbait has a unique skirt in that it's got scales on part of the skirt and the other part of the skirt doesn't, so it almost emulates a bait fish. Went with Colorado blades. The Colorado blade allows you to throw it out and reel it slower but keep it up higher in the water column, to where if you were throwing a willow blade, it doesn't give off as much vibration and you have to reel it faster.
To keep it up.
Exactly. And with cooler, shallow water, for me, I go with the Colorado blades.
Now, how about color? I mean, everybody's got their preference. You have silver and gold here. What, you like that just for this type of year, or is this what you go through usually?
What I normally go by is in very clear water, I'll fish straight silver or nickel. If the water's off color, I like to have either gold and nickel or maybe copper and nickel, especially when you have high blue skies like we do today. Now, if it was cloudy, I would go over to like a pair of golds or a pair of copper blades and maybe even a hammered type finish, because that would give you, as the hammering rotates, it gives you a lot more light reflection.
And size-wise?
That's a 3/8. It's a good all-around size. One of the big things though is that trailer hook hanging on the back.
That's one thing that did help today.
Almost every fish we caught today had both hooks, but the trailer hook most of the time is what you need.
So when you're out spinnerbait fishing, use that trailer hook, and that's the tackle box.
Right?
Yeah. Nice fish.
Yeah. Well, this one's got it good too. I'm gonna give him the lift.
Lift.
Fatty.
There you go. Look at that belly.
Think that one's getting ready to spawn soon?
Look at that belly.
Wow.
God. Look at that. That's where
Nice
it
fat
pop
fish.
open.
Yep. And you could tell that fish really wanted it because the bait was right across the
Right
side
through
of the
that-
mouth.
But he just come in there and
And there was no doubt about that one. What a good fish.
hey, Steve, I want to thank you for taking me out here, catching those fish on that thing. Hey, I'm Bob Murray, Delaware Valley Outdoors. Don't forget to go to our website, Delaware Valley Outdoors, and we had all kinds of stuff, fishing reports and YouTube stuff. Stop by and see us. All right, Stevie.
Okay.
Now, the only thing that would make it better is if I had a house on a lake. I could just nap right on the dock. It's a spring one too, huh?
Yep.
Fat.
They wallow a lot.
Yep.
Yeah. Other times of the year, you know, they'd be jumping.
Yeah.
Yeah, not this time of year.
Look at that. Let them go.
Shook his head and spit it, huh?
Yep. They're paying when you get him in the boat.
Not everybody can boat them, you know.
Yeah.
Takes a There's a white perch for you. And boy, are they big today. Yeah. Ooh, yellow perch.
I like that little bait.
They're slamming this little guy, kind of like a citrus shad color. And you know, we're fishing a citrus shad to kind of emulate the shad that are in the lake. I think we'll get some bigger ones. Switch to the crank.
Oh, I lost him.
I didn't see anything. Did he have a fish?